Good morning. Welcome to today's session where we'll be reading from our book, Spiritual Hygiene. I hope you guys are well today. Our book from Iyanla Vanzant, the author, minister, the healer, spiritual leader. She wears many hats. God has allowed her to be a vessel to deliver a message of spiritual hygiene to us, which I feel like is very appropriate right now. And so we are going into level four. Level four, yeah, we just ended level three last week. Let me see here. I hope you guys are well today, by the way. My name is Leticia, and this is, let's see. This is a reading that we've been doing for quite a few months now. And it's based around healing, right? This is all about healing, nothing more. It's also about, understanding our calling, and taking it seriously. Like when I first came into spirituality, there was almost like the misunderstanding about what it is. In a way, it's very liberating, but at the same time, there's a lot, when we think of it in terms of like being an entrepreneur, right? There's so many perks about being your own boss and running your own business. It's like, oh, you have your schedule that you can set. You have the freedom to do that, to work when you want. You remove the glass ceiling. You can make as much as you want. You can create it. You're the director when it comes to creativity. Like there's so many different aspects that you have control over. But on the other side of that, what we don't many times look at too is the increased responsibility. No longer do you have to wait to have someone ask you to do what you need to do. Like that's all on your plate to do. You are responsible for setting the parameters and the boundaries and for setting the structure and for challenging the limits and putting in place protection. Like you're responsible for all of that. In the same way, spirituality is the same. It's very much unlike religion where we are expecting someone else to tell us what to do or someone else to lead us. When we look at spirituality, we take responsibility for that charge for ourselves. And it is liberating, but at the same time, there's a lot of responsibility that is increased around that, around taking that autonomy on for yourself. That's what this is about. Practical path for clean living, inner authority, and divine freedom. And so there's a lot of responsibility around that. And I think many may misinterpret that as just being released to do whatever you feel, whenever you feel, however you feel, and not being accountable. But you are accountable. You are accountable both to yourself and you're still accountable to the Creator, right? These gifts, these talents, these callings that we have carry a weight. They carry a weight. I can't tell you the many things I had to endure to get to where I am here. There's a cost. When we look at all of these ascended masters, all of these people that came to show the way, depending on what you believe, right? Some would call it Buddha. Some might call them Jesus. Some might call them Muhammad. There's so many different people that have led a charge to certain belief systems, but they were just way showers. And when we look at their lives, there was a cost to each of their lives. It wasn't something that was a walk in the park or a smooth swim up the stream. No, there was a cost that was paid to lead that charge, to follow the life purpose given to them. And in that same way, I feel like we all have been called to do something that causes us to also realize the responsibility and the cost around it. Even as we look at her life, the author of this book that we're reading today, it was costly. Getting to where she is today was not an easy plight. And I don't believe that she would wish that on anybody. Nevertheless, this is the fruit of that labor, is to help us to understand and to navigate to get to where it is that we also need to be. And also to understand that this is not just a liberation party, right? But there's a responsibility behind it, because this holds true no matter what system of belief you hold. What you sow, you will in fact reap. Not only is that a belief that each of the religious theologies hold, whether you're spiritual or religious, but it's also a law of the universe, absence of any type of belief. What you put out will absolutely come back. I think is something that we need to understand, especially as we deal with spiritual hygiene. It's understanding the weight of what it is that we're doing, what it is that we're called to do, how we've been called to embrace change and transformation to actually meet our purpose. It's bigger than us. It's bigger than what we believe to be even true. Because your truth is according to what you've experienced, just like mine is. Nobody can refute my truth or my testimony because you haven't walked in my shoes. You haven't experienced life through these eyes. And so, but it's a matter of boiling down to everybody taking responsibility for themselves, for their own actions. And that's why this is so beautiful, because she is so open and so humble that she has used herself as an example. And as we've heard, it hasn't been a pretty walk. It has not been a pretty experience. Nevertheless, it was one she was using to teach and to help guide others down the right path. Okay? For those that have ears, hear. Let them hear. So today, like, share, comment, subscribe. My name is Letty or Leticia, and this channel is Blood Moon Oracle. But for purposes of today's reading, we're talking about spiritual hygiene, and we are on chapter 15, page 279, spiritual hygiene for parenting. So last week we talked about sacred return. This was the ending of level 3. And as we concluded, we talked about just what it means to be reclaimed, right? To reclaim ourselves, what that looks like, and how we walk through that threshold of doing that. That's what chapter for level 3 was about. It was about choosing to return to the altar of our being, right? Even allowing ourselves to see ourselves with new eyes, right? And handle ourselves in a way with steady hands as well. We talked about that last week, what that means, this journey around spiritual responsibility, our sacred duty to care for, to cultivate, and to align our inner life, our mind, our heart, our body, and our soul with divine truth. And I know that just slips off my tongue so easily, doesn't it? But there's weight to what I'm saying. I'll say that again. And by no means am I saying that it's easy. I'm on this journey as well. And so is Ayanla. She's still on the journey. Still. And so by no means is this an easy suggestion or an easy duty to carry, but it's one that's necessary for our healing, to reclaim our own stewardship over our own energy, our own choices over our own presence. We talked about that last week. And so this was an invitation to really stop pretending to be whole, stop pretending to be healed, stop pretending to live, and actually start doing it with authenticity, starting where we are right now. And every last one of us starts from a broken place. So don't feel like you have to show up already finished. No, we're all in this process of being healed, being remade, becoming more aware so that we can be more engaged with how things are unfolding in a healthy way. And so as we usher into level 4, that's what we ended level 3 with, reclaiming the sacred self and how we're doing that. As we go into chapter 15, you're going into level 4 with spiritual hygiene for parenting. And she starts with return to wholeness while raising a soul. This has been part of her story as we heard early on in the book. And it has been like the core of this spiritual hygiene. She used herself as an example, some of her failures as a parent, or I don't even know if I would call it failure. She felt like it was, but really it was life lessons. Some of the lessons we may have signed up to experience here in this time, in this place. And so she used herself as an example. One of the hugest part of that example was the parenting role that taught her and showed her what was lacking, what was needed to be healed, right? The reflection of herself through her children, through her parenting. And so returning to whole while parenting the soul, let's get started. If you have your books, we're on page 279. There was a time in my life when I had to face a truth so sacred and sobering that it cracked something open in me forever. I failed my children. Not because I was a bad person, nor did I have a conscious intent to break their hearts or destroy their sense of worth and value, but that is exactly what I did. Not because I didn't love them with my whole being. I failed them because for most of their lives and my own, I had no clue of the existence or importance of spiritual hygiene. Okay? I failed them because I did not know how to, nor did I take the time to learn how to heal my own trauma and wounding. I did not yet understand that unresolved pain becomes the lens through which love, lead, discipline, and nurture. I believe that giving my children things, opportunities, comforts, and achievements could somehow make up for what I had not yet learned or given myself. Emotional healing. I failed them because I believed I was doing the right thing in the right ways, and I was not open or available to changing the way I parented as I believed I knew what my children needed. I am now aware that I was. That's deep. She says, I tried desperately not to be like my grandmother, who was abusive. I tried not to be like my father, who was emotionally unavailable. Yet, in trying so hard not to be like them, I ended up passing down the very same emotional disconnection and dysfunction that I experienced. I put all of my effort into doing better, but I had not learned how to be better from the inside out. This unclean pattern affected all of my children, but it was Nisa, my youngest, who took it to heart the most. Her sweet, sensitive soul absorbed the echoes of what I had not yet transmuted, what I had ignored, denied, and avoided. While none of this was conscious or intentional, that does not mean it was not present or had no impact. I am now aware that it did. Okay. And so she goes on to talk about how her lack of healing, lack of awareness, lack of ability to know that she needed healing, even though it was not intentional, had negatively impacted her children devastatingly, because she had not learned while she was parenting. She had not learned how to transmute. And for those of you that don't know what transmute means, that means to take something of lesser value and actually alchemize that into something useful of higher value, something that, it's kind of like taking coal and you put coal under extreme pressure and heat. What do you get? We all know you get a diamond, right? That's what it means to transmute. Take something of lesser value, uh, you know, and actually create conditions, or through the conditions, through the fire, through the trials, through the difficulty, through the pain, actually treat that pain, that abuse that she received, that neglect that she experienced, the lack of attention and emotion that was needed for her to develop into a mature, healthy adult, to take the lack thereof and acknowledge that that wasn't given, learn what that means to have added, and pull those experiences into who you are so that you can then show up in a way that's necessary for your kids. She didn't know how to transmute. Okay. And I'm gonna just look up that word because I didn't see it in her glossary. I know she has a lot of words in the glossary. Transmute is not one of them. So the technical definition of transmute is to completely change the form, nature, substance, or appearance of something into a different, often higher or better state. Usually it's used in chemistry and physics to describe changing one element or substance into another. Example, coal to a diamond. And it is related to alchemy. Historically, this was the central goal of alchemy, like attempting to transmute lead into gold, right? But when we look at it figuratively, used in everyday language, the art to describe turning abstract concepts into something else, such as transmuting personal grief into beautiful music, or turning raw data into valuable information, right? And so she didn't know any of that, which is also one of the beautiful things too about understanding all of these beautiful experiences that can happen if you're open to it, if you are not closed-minded, and it's very unfortunate because sometimes, because of how we're taught, sometimes if we're taught under very strict circumstances, sometimes it may have something to do with belief systems and values. It restricts certain information from coming into our experience. Whereas had we been open to that information, it could totally change life as we know it. And I am a recipient of that type of experience. The fact that I am open to learn different things and to experience different things. Not everything is going to be for me, and that's okay. But I hold the right to be open to experience that if I want. And there are some things that absolutely has changed my life, right? 10 times over. And so this was one of the things that she had not yet had the awareness of, being able to transmute things. She didn't even realize she could transmute it. The only thing she knew is that there was, and she may not have even known that there was something lacking. She just was existing in this state of lack mindset, defeat, woundedness, right? And didn't really know at that point how to transform that into something higher and to align that with her life purpose. So she's there now, but there was a process to getting there. And parenting was one of those processes for Iyanla. She goes on to say that this is not a confession of guilt or wretchedness. There are awarenesses, the sacred reckonings that I have discovered, acknowledged, examined, and forgiven. My children knew I loved them fiercely. They knew that on any given Sunday, I would have taken a bullet for them. Ronnie, the abused, neglected, broken little girl, was Damon and Jemiah's mother. She became Rhonda, the one who masked and denied the wounds of Ronnie. Ronnie was Nisa's mother. As Rhonda transformed into Iyanla, I became someone new. I recreated my relationship with each of my children using honesty, humility, and healing principles and practices as the foundation for our new connection. I was going to say creation, for our new connection. Over time, they each came to understand that when they were growing, unfolding, I did not have what they needed when they needed it. Right? And we go back and we understand what was happening while she was raising the kids. She was in a very abusive relationship. Not that that's an excuse, because It's our responsibility again, right? Spiritual hygiene is all about you understanding and being aware of your responsibility to yourself. And in being responsible to yourself, you are also being responsible to those who are under your care and dependent upon you. And so, one thing she did know, even in all of that lack mindset, is that I'm better than this. We will not stay in this abusive relationship, right? She had enough sense to walk away. She had enough self love to know that she needed and wanted better, that there was something better for her than what she was currently receiving or in. She knew that much. And so she made it plain to her kids. She took accountability. That's big, right? And I'm sure we all have regrets, and we will, because nobody's perfect. Parenting, I wish there was a handbook on how to be a parent. We don't have that. And even though we have those that can give us advice, we still have to tread this experience from our own wisdom and our own knowledge, right? You could take advice, but at the end of the day, you need to take responsibility for parenting your own children. Even though you send them to school, even though you send them, if you send them to a house of worship or to some type of, Ephesus, and I think that's the word, some type of building or place where they go and learn spiritual values, even in that, you are responsible for your children. Okay? They spend more time away from us than they do with us. That's really a reality, especially if you have young kids. And it's important to know that, because if you're not careful, you will end up allowing other people to raise your kids, allowing institutions to raise your kids, when really at the heart, you should stand, right? At the heart of the structure for your children, you should stand in that place, okay? But she goes on to explain how she took accountability, even though she fell short. She did take accountability through honesty. Many of us stand at a breaking point with our kids, and we wonder why they don't want to come around. We wonder why they find, love and acceptance everywhere else but at home. There may be some accountability that needs to be taken. There may be some apologies that need to be made. There may be some sit-down talks that we need to have with our kids to explain to them, hey, this, and this, but I understand that I fell short. But this is what was really, let me really be honest with you. For whatever reason, I didn't have the capacity to be there 100%, whatever it was, right? There's some discussions that need to be had. As hard as that seems, a lot of parents pride themselves on being the authority, but that's not what parenting is. Parenting is not lording your authority over your kids. It's a balance of love and of trust and of modeling, right? And trusting that everything that you put into them will be enough for them to eventually be in a position to make good decisions. And when we're wrong, acknowledging that. Listen, I thought that was the right thing to do, but I found some new information told me otherwise. So scratch that. Let's rethink that. Let's talk about this, right? This is why I thought like that. Maybe this is how I was raised, right? But we're not going to do that because that don't work out too well. Let's try something else, right? It's about building relationships and bonds. And sometimes that's lacking. Not that we allow them to run free and do what they want and learn. No, but it's a balance of all of that. There needs to be boundaries, absolutely. That's protection. But at the same time, there needs to be freedom as well. That's trust, right? There needs to be love, touching, hugs, kisses. That is intimacy, And so there's just a balance of all of these things. And sometimes when we don't get it, it becomes difficult. It's like, how do you give what you've never received? But we have to find a way to fill these voids, right? And it's through awareness of what's lacking, what's missing. I think that's why it's so important to really be open, have an open, honest relationship, first with ourselves, so that we can see clearly. And then with those, our children, you know, or it could be your spouse too, like those that are close to us that are connected in that way. Then she says, here is another sacred truth that I learned. Just because I healed, it did not mean that their scars vanished. Okay, this is the next thing to understand. Just because you heal doesn't mean it cancels out the pain. No, it doesn't. Doesn't mean that it never happened. Now the scars are gone and there's no repercussions for what has happened. That's not what that means. They each had to choose how to face what they had inherited. They have a choice, just like you did. Damon did it with bold questions and resistance that eventually gave way to clarity. Jamia did it with grace and elegance, becoming one of my most excellent teachers. Nisa could on to her fixed third dimension, or Nisa did not or did not make the same choice. She chose unconsciously to hang on to her fixed third dimensional reality experience. So she had three girls. Each of them had a different, or she had two girls and one boy. I think it was three girls. Each of them chose to express or respond to her vulnerability about falling short as a parent differently. And they had every right to. And she had to, accept and respect whatever they decided to do. Okay? Parenting, I now know, is not just about raising children. Yeah, it's not. It's about raising consciousness. Parenting is not just about raising children. It's about raising consciousness. It is not simply about teaching our children to behave. It is about learning how to become a living temple internally and a sanctuary of safety externally. So it's about teaching to become a living temple internally and about being a sanctuary of safety externally. Wow. Imagine that. Mm-hmm. It is the divine work of raising your children and your entire ancestral lineage into a higher vibrational field. Wow. The fifth dimensional reality where everything is energy. Every thought becomes form, and every feeling must be clear and clean. This path requires you to know and trust that who you are, as you are, is enough, and to take on the sacred responsibility to refine, realign, and rise. Okay? To parent from this place means a few things. First, it means becoming aware of the energy that you bring into your home. What energy do you bring into your home as a parent? First. Second, releasing generational stories that no longer serve. Okay? What is it about how you have been raised or what you've been taught, or stories that have circulated through your family that you find is no longer useful as you pass on what you would like for your next generation to represent? As you pass on your legacy, what is no longer useful? And second. Third, cleansing your emotional field so your children do not absorb what was never theirs to carry. How can you break generational cycles of pain or lack or destruction? Cleansing your energy field so that they don't have to absorb or carry what's not theirs. That's third, okay? So first is awareness of the energy you're bringing into your home as a parent. Second is releasing what no longer serves. And third is cleansing, okay? We are not parenting in the same world as our parents did. We have more information. We have more access, more insight, more tools. We must stop saying, that's just the way it is. That's just the way things are. And because I said so, right? How many of us say that? Because I said so. We must begin saying, I am the one who clears the path. Spiritual hygiene is now the parent's divine responsibility. She says now, but I feel like it has always been. It's always been our responsibility. Spiritual hygiene has been our responsibility to our children, primarily, first and foremost. It is the responsibility to cleanse what was inherited, to sanctify what is present, and to plant only what is worthy of the future. This is how we parent in the age of light. This is how we create a new reality. And this is interestingly, I've always had this type of insight with my children of wanting to cleanse and detoxify like what the past has brought forward in my life. And make no mistake about it, when you take on this type of mindset and this type of goal, or you take this type of action, you will receive negative repercussions behind that. There will be an uprising, right, against you in many ways for trying to defeat the enemies of your bloodline. There's a certain, almost like a force that rises up against you when you try to change a path, when you try to change a mindset that is prevalent within your bloodline. It's almost like the energy of your bloodline rises up to try to rebel against you, to move in a different direction, right? So it's not going to be easy. She says it like it's going to be easy, but it's not. All HE double hockey sticks is going to break loose. I feel like really for some of you, and I'm just kind of, tapping into the energy. So for some of you, you may have been dealing with this all of your life. And I can definitely resonate with that. It's like for the curse breakers, and you may have many names. You may be called the black sheep. You may be called the the chosen one, whatever you refer refer to yourself as. You've always been different, and in many ways, always set apart. I'm going to say that. That's the most positive way I can say that. You've always been set apart. Maybe even picked on before you even realized why you were being picked on. The energy knew you before you knew you. Before you even realized what you've been called to do, you were being suppressed. And the energy was trying to defeat the energy in you before you even became aware of your calling to change the bloodline, to change these things, right? And so make no mistake about it, it's not going to be easy. Because there is something ancient that wants to stay as it is. It's like there's something that wants to change and become better and to grow and to rise and, break out of everything familiar. There's also the energy that wants everything to stay the same. Remember, there's a duality to everything. Okay? So make no mistake about it. When you go to start making these changes as it pertains to the things that you have control over, your kids, there's going to be some difficulties there. It may, in fact, be your kids rebelling, right? But it shows up in many different ways. Just understand and don't be surprised, right, when it happens. It's like, well, I thought I was doing something good. Why does it feel like I'm breaking like the most worst, law that life has ever known? I thought I was doing something good. Why does it feel like I'm doing something bad? Why is all HE double hockey sticks rising up against me? But here I am just trying to make things better. It's because there is what we call principalities that are in operation. Yes, in our bloodlines too. They don't want to see things get better. They don't want to see us become awakened and aware and to become really in tune with ourselves, along with other principalities, depending on where we live, what type of systems we were raised under. There's all these different energetic intertwinings happening around us and around our family structure and around our lives. There's just so many things that we wake up to and we become aware of that we need to break, especially as it pertains to things that we may want to change. There may be things that we need to then denounce for that change, right? And so make no mistake about it. This is going to be the fight of your life, okay? But it is worth it. This is worth it. So I'm going to reread that. She said, parenting, I know now, is not just about raising children, it's about raising consciousness. It is not simply about teaching our children to behave. It is about learning how to become a living temple internally and a sanctuary of safety externally. Okay? Parenting in today's world is not just a role, it's a spiritual initiation. It is the divine work of raising your children and your entire ancestral lineage into a higher vibrational field. You know what that means? This is not just about getting up, taking kids to school, going to work, picking up the kids, coming home, fixing dinner, and going to sleep. No, it's deeper than that. The fifth dimensional reality where everything is energy. Every thought becomes form. Every feeling must be clear and clean. This path requires you to know and trust who you are as you are is enough, and to take on the sacred responsibility to refine, realign, and rise, right? And it means those three things that we mentioned: being aware, cleansing, and releasing what no longer serves how you want to see your bloodline move forward. You're responsible for that. You're in control of that, okay? And then we go into the next part that says put principles into place. So what does that mean? If it's not just the 3D going through the motions every day, right? Routine. What does that mean then? Putting principles into place. So she goes on to say, there is a moment, a quiet but unforgettable, when I realized I was not simply raising a daughter. I was raising myself. Nisa was no longer a toddler, but a still small enough to curl into my lap. That day, she did something that struck a nerve, something minor in the grand scheme of things, but I felt heat rising in my body, an old familiar tension in my jaw. I felt overwhelmed. I was physically and mentally exhausted. When she came to sit with me and on me, I told her to stop. My reaction to her wasn't about her at all. It was my own wound, something unresolved from my own childhood that was grabbing the steering wheel of my heart. Have you ever had those moments where you act as a parent, but it's not you acting, it's almost like something familiar, unconsciously acting through you, and you're like, dang, why did I do that? Like, that wasn't even like me. It's something familiar from your experience as a child. In that moment, I heard myself speaking, not as the conscious mother I had worked so hard to become, but as the frightened, reactive girl who had once longed for gentleness and grace and didn't always receive it. When I saw my pain in Nisa's eyes, I recognized it immediately, undeniably. I went into the bathroom, sat on the closed lid of the toilet, and wept. I breathed. I asked God for help. In that manner, something in my spiritual core rose up. Somehow I knew that parenting is a sacred mirror. And although I did not understand the concept or have the language at the time, I realized that spiritual hygiene meant I must cleanse myself before I could effectively parent my children. Cleansing to parent. That means that this is just as sacred as standing before a pulpit, preaching to a congregation, or even getting on here and speaking to you all. Cleansing to parent. Right? Many of us do a lot of cleansing, especially if you're into spirituality. Right? We cleanse to do all of these sacred things, do these rituals. But what about parenting? How much more important is parenting than this? Do you see your job as a parent in that way? Do you give the same reverence to parenting as you do other areas of your life? That moment taught me a profound truth. We cannot protect our children from everything, but we can protect them from our own projections when we are willing to face them. We can protect them when we're willing to face our projections. Okay. And then she goes into a couple of things. The first thing is parenting the child without abandoning the inner child. Okay. Parenting is a relationship. Like any other relationship, we bring all of who we are to the relationship table in our capacity to parent. This means we must be in a healthy relationship with ourselves. Many of us unknowingly betray our inner child in our efforts to do better or be better as parents. We swing toward perfectionism or overcompensation. Proper parenting is not about a better performance. It is about physical, mental, and emotional presence. It's about physical, mental, and emotional presence. Being there physically, being there mentally, and being there emotionally. When we acknowledge the wounds that we carry, we can hold both the child in front of us and the child within us with equal compassion. It's about being aware of what we carry, okay? So that we can be aware when we are presenting ourselves to our children. The next thing, emotional regulation as a spiritual offering, okay? Your ability to regulate rather than suppress, hold things in. Your emotions is essential for psychological and emotional maturity. It is a spiritual discipline. Every breath you take, instead of yelling, is a prayer. Every pause before reacting is an offering placed at the altar of your family's peace and your child's emotional safety and well-being. Okay? Emotional regulation as a spiritual offering. Next is conscious correction without contamination. Okay? Discipline must never come at the expense of dignity. Okay? Spiritual hygiene in parenting invites us to clean our energy before we correct. Whew. Children absorb not just the words we say, but the tone, the tension, the intention in our spirit. Correction that emerges from calm, centered clarity leaves no residue of shame. It becomes an offering from your heart on the altar of the child's heart. Okay? Take a moment and ask, how should I say this? How should I address this? What would be the best way to effectively get the message across while also building them up, right? The next thing is the sacred assignment of breaking generational cycles, okay? To be conscious as a parent is to stand at a crossroads between what has been and what could be. It is to embody both the story that was inherited and the possibility of a new story that we can tell or that can be told. As parents, we hold the sacred opportunity to end ancestral trauma and dismantle generational dysfunction. This divine opportunity does not begin with our children, it begins with us. We must acknowledge what we carry. Spiritual hygiene invites us as parents into a sacred reckoning where we must become aware of and acknowledge that dysfunction exists, not just in our family history, but also in the way that we think, in the way that we react, in the way that we cope, and in the way that we relate. Again, this is not about blame. This is about truth as purification. So some of the things that we must ask is, where did I learn to disconnect when I feel afraid? Why do I feel unworthy when I am not performing? What did I witness as love, as safety, as success? Which emotions have I buried beneath my parenting script? Without awareness, we unconsciously repeat what we have never healed. The trauma we avoid becomes the trauma we transmit. Mm. And just because they turn 18 does not mean you stop parenting. Mm-mm. Parenting is a lifelong job, okay? Because they always need us in different capacities. The older they get, they become less physically dependent, but they are still very much connected and dependent when it comes to the wisdom that we can offer and the guidance, right? We must examine our patterns lovingly and honestly. Spiritual hygiene teaches us that residue lives in our thoughts, our choices, and in our energy. So we must examine our bonding patterns. Do we create codependency or healthy attachment? That's a good one. Our scarcity behaviors. Do we model fear or lack or trust as the foundation for provision? How are we modeling that? Our emotional residue. Our guilt, shame, rage, or unspoken grief silently shaping how we show up? To cleanse these patterns is not to erase the past, but to release its grip on our future. It requires honesty, not denial. It requires a radical truth spoken with grace. Until we stop telling the stories that justify our pain, we cannot dismantle them. Okay? We have to change the story. And not that we have to take ownership of that story, because some of the stories we have were inherited. It's a story that was told to us. You know, like I was saying back in one of the earlier chapters, like be careful of who you are allowing to speak into your kids' lives, including yourself, depending on what you're speaking. Because sometimes we get these messages over and over and over, and it just hurts my heart, you know, especially when you have people that talk down to their children. It's like, you're never going to be anything. You always, you know, the yada, yada, yada. That becomes the voice in your child's head. Or you may be sending them somewhere to a classroom, you know, where there's negative connotations that's being fed to them. Talk to your kids when they come home from school. Okay, what's going on in school? What type of conversations do you have with your teacher? Oh, well, how did your teacher respond to that? What did they say? Be curious about your child's education. When they go to church, you send them to church or you send them to karate class. Like, what is the discussion being had? Be curious, be nosy, right? You need to know. A lot of times, I know there were certain things that I never even shared with my mom until I was grown. I was like maybe going on 40 when I shared these things. It's like the opportunity was never really given to share it. That's why I didn't. But had she asked, maybe I would have. Had my father asked, maybe I would have. So be curious. Get involved with those that are involved with your kids. You need to know. Telling the truth is not enough. We must practice spiritual hygiene. Okay? Not do what I say, not as I do. That don't work. It is not enough to name the trauma. We must also cleanse the emotional and energetic residue the trauma has left behind. This is the work of spiritual hygiene. It means being willing and diligent about releasing inherited shame through daily reflection, breath, and truth telling. That means we need to be in the process of healing these things, right? Openly, consistently. We need to be in the process of doing the work, honoring our grief instead of numbing it with distractions or overgiving, processing, healing. We need to be engaging that positive release, okay? Practicing forgiveness as a path of liberation, creating opportunities and rituals that bless our children while also restoring our inner child. Right? One of the beautiful things that I used to do with my kids, I think I've mentioned this a couple of times, is I was a single parent, and so I was everything to everybody, including a couple of older relatives that I helped to care for too. So not only was I a single parent, but I also was doing a lot of other things. But I used to take time every weekend to choose one of them to go and let them have me all to themselves. You know, it's like, not every weekend, but once a month, I would take each of them a weekend and we would go and do things, just me and that one child, so that they can have all of my attention. And, you know, even if it was just going to sit down and have ice cream or go eat, go watch a movie or go to the arcade, you know, I would take them and allow them to just be with me, have me all to themselves. And it was never anything like totally just like, you don't have to do anything like amazing. It was just being with them, letting them know, I see you. What's going on with you? Talk to me. I'm here. Is there anything you want to say? Like, it was just having the opportunity. That was a ritual. Now that I look back, that was a ritual that I created around giving space, not only to them as children, but even to my own child. That was something that I didn't do. Cleansing the emotional atmosphere of our home with clarity, laughter, sharing, and peace. That was another thing. Beautiful. So all of these ways are ways that we can do that. Demonstrate spiritual hygiene. It's not do as I say, not as I do. You need to demonstrate that, okay? The gift of spiritual hygiene. When we do our internal spiritual hygiene work and the external work, our children receive more than lectures and rules. They receive a spiritually clean space where they can grow. A model of what it means to live whole, not just to behave well. A lineage that is being rewritten in real time through every healed reaction, every sacred pause, every breath we take before we speak, right? Turning our parenting into a sacred act. We cannot change what happened to us, but we can become the sacred interruption. We can be the ones who turn trauma into truth, pain into power, and shame into sanctified awareness. This is the gift of spiritual hygiene in parenting, to become a clean vessel through which love, clarity, and divine presence can flow to the next generation. And I tell you, this is something that I'm really looking forward to with my grandkids, and maybe in the next lifetime when I get to parent again. If I could go back and redo it, I absolutely would. I've been privileged to be able to parent about 6 children. Not all of them were ones that passed through my body. Half of them were. The other half were a gift. And if I could go back, I would absolutely do it all over again with what I know now. I'm looking forward to being a grandparent. I'm not rushing it, in due time. When it's time, when they've matured and they're ready for that responsibility. But I'm looking forward to that because there's so much that I want to share. And so much that I have to share. And I'm just excited. I'm excited about life. There are main tenets of spiritual hygiene for parenting. Parenting is not merely a role we play. It is a sacred transmission of divine energy. We are transmitting energy. It is the daily act of imprinting energy, beliefs, and behaviors upon another soul. As such, it demands more than love. Love is not enough. It requires personal spiritual hygiene. To parent consciously is to recognize that every word, every reaction, every silence, and every embrace causes a vibration. These tenets are not rules, they are reminders. They are guiding principles for those who choose to parent from a place of alignment, awareness, and generational healing. These truths illuminate the path for those who dare to be clean vessels, breaking cycles, reclaiming power, and becoming the embodied blessing their lineage has long awaited for. That's you? Are you the one? Healing before handling. As a parent, you must be willing to heal your own wounds before you attempt to guide a child through theirs. Unhealed trauma becomes distorted parenting. Cleansing your inner child makes space for a parenting style rooted in compassion rather than control. So the premise of this healing is I cleanse so I do not contaminate. Okay? Presence over performance. Children do not need perfect parents. They need present parents. I'll say that again. Children don't need perfect parents. They need present parents. Spiritual hygiene invites you to be emotionally available. energetically grounded and mentally clear rather than overly concerned with being right or enough. This healing premise says my wholeness is more impactful than my perfection. Okay? Ooh, this is getting good. If this is getting good to you, share this with somebody, okay? Because we need to hear this. Share it, like, comment, let me know. Emotional regulation is sacred service. Every moment you choose calm over chaos, breath over blame, you sanctify your role as a parent. Regulation is not repression. It is the sacred stewardship of your energy, tone, and timing. The healing premise here is my nervous system is a sanctuary, not a raging storm. Knowing when to, how to. Conscious correction without contamination. Discipline should be an act of love, not a release of your unprocessed emotions. Correction that comes from clarity builds trust. Correction that comes from reactivity fractures the soul. The healing premise here is I cleanse my energy before I offer guidance. Energetic responsibility is inherited. Children absorb the energy in the atmosphere of the home. Your anxiety, silence, resentment, or joy becomes part of their inner world. Spiritual hygiene requires awareness of what you are transmitting into the space, both spoken and unspoken. This healing premise says, I am the energetic blueprint of this household. Parenting the inner child is part of parenting. You cannot fully honor the child in front of you while rejecting the child within you. Spiritual hygiene teaches that every interaction with your child is also an invitation to heal something in yourself. The healing premise, as I tend to them, tend to me. Transparency with accountability, not shame. Your mistakes do not make you unworthy or wrong. Modeling apology, repair, and growth teaches your children how to face themselves with honesty and how to love themselves through imperfection. The healing premise here is my humility heals more than my image ever could. Ooh. Ooh. Sacred ritual and reflection create safety. A spiritual hygienic home is not just physically clean, it is energetically clean. Rituals of breath, reflection, prayer, and emotional check-ins cultivate an environment of emotional safety and spiritual coherence. The healing premise here says, we keep the house clean by keeping the energy clear. And then she lists some sacred practices for spiritual centered parenting. The first thing is to pause and presence ritual for reactive moments when you feel like things feel like you're going to take it there, right? She says you can place one hand on your heart and the other one on your belly. Whisper aloud, I am fully present. I choose love and sacred responsibility over the need to be right or perform. And then give yourself about 90 seconds of a sacred pause before responding. That's one that I practice. Like I said, just because they turn 18 don't mean that they stop needing you, right? Daily anchoring before discipline. Inhale deeply and say, I am calm. Exhale fully and say, I create the space, the tone, the energy of this moment. And then repeat this breath sequence 3 times before speaking or correcting. Okay? And then have family spiritual hygiene check-ins. This is one that I've practiced often too, at least once a month. I no longer have all of my kids at home with me. However, when they were, I routinely did check-ins, like with the busy schedules, everybody working, coming and going, doing, right? It's like, no, we need to come together. Let's talk. What's working? What's not? What's going on with you? Anybody got some raging to do? You want to do an outburst? What's going on? Regular check-ins. Very necessary. family check-ins where everybody is present. And there were some times where I had to do it late at night because that was really the only time we were all at the house. It's like 11 o'clock. Come on out the bedroom. Get out the bed. We need to talk. Let's have a family meeting. My kids will tell you I'm huge with this keeping the energy clean because I'm one who is very sensitive to energy. Like, you're not supposed to destroy the energy of the home because you're having a bad day, right? So I feel like it's just necessary, to get things out in the open, keep the avenues of communication clean. It's necessary to find out like where you are. And many times it was things that I needed to say too. If there was something that I just could not hold and it was just about to burst open, it's like, okay, instead of raging and getting my point across like that, it's like, okay, let's sit down and talk about this. Family meeting, some emergency family meetings. We need to have a family meeting tonight, so get prepared. We're having a meeting. That was a time for me to really express my concerns, what was weighing heavy on my heart, what I needed to see, what I wasn't seeing, and to see how they were feeling too. Maybe I'm just seeing it from my side. Let me understand where you're coming from, what you're going through. This is what I need. Okay, what do you need? Have a weekly sacred circle with your children or household where everyone shares one reflection of gratitude, one challenge, and one deeply felt soul request. Light a candle, begin with a breath, and end with a family blessing. And this is optional. Include a shared affirmation or cleansing prayer. Okay? These are just suggestions she's giving for parenting. Before we knew to call it trauma, we called it parenting, right? Before we knew how to name energy, we referred to it as discipline. Many of the words passed from parent to child, often in moments of stress, fear, or fatigue, carry more than just commands or corrections. Each phrase you speak to a child can carry the energetic imprint of unprocessed emotion, inherited authority structures, and trauma-informed control. These are not simply sentences. They are echoes, resonances of voices that never got to be heard, children that never got to be comforted, and power that was misused in the name of survival. When we speak these phrases, we are not only addressing our child, but we are also channeling a legacy. Spiritual hygiene calls us to interrupt that legacy with consciousness, compassion, and informed choice. It invites us to examine the energetic root of our words and offer language that not only disciplines, but also heals. The following transformations are not about achieving perfection. They are about purification. They are a way to clear the spoken atmosphere between you and your child so that love, learning, and legacy can be reshaped. Okay? Transforming common parental behaviors through spiritual hygiene. That do it because I said so. Y'all know that. Shaking of the head. Because I said so. Energetic insight. This statement often arises with a sense of urgency, overwhelm, or a conditioned belief that authority must be asserted without explanation. It shuts down inquiry and teaches blind obedience rather than conscious understanding. This casts out critical thinking when we do that and say that. We want critically thinking children, people that can think for themselves. That is the goal. With the spiritual hygiene upgrade when it comes to do it because I said so. I know this may not make sense to you right now, but I'm asking you to trust me. I will explain when I know you will understand more. I use that to this day, and my kids are well grown on their own. I still recognize the need to talk to them and to explain to them and to offer them guidance. You may not understand it now while I'm saying this, but it'll make sense later. Okay? I think I just had a talk with one of them recently. Why it heals. This maintains a healthy authority while honoring the child's capacity to think and feel. It plants seeds of trust rather than fear, right? It's acknowledging, listen, you are able to think for yourself. I understand that, and so the next one is don't talk back to me. Who do you think you're talking to, right? Remember that one, okay? This phrase often comes from a place of personal insecurity or unresolved emotional reactivity. It teaches suppression of voice and discourages self-expression. The spiritual hygiene upgrade is, I hear that you are upset. Let's talk about this when we both can hear and speak respectfully. Now, why this heals is because it affirms that the child's voice matters within sacred boundaries of mutual respect and timing. Okay. Next one is, you never do what you're told. This is a declaration of frustration and powerlessness. It creates shame and labels the child rather than addressing behavior. Spiritual hygiene upgrade is, I notice you're having a hard time practicing obedience and following instruction. Can we talk about what's going on for you? I love these. Why it heals is it invites deeper connection and opens the door for accountability without condemnation. Okay. The next one is, you think you know everything. This phrase diminishes curiosity and confidence. It stems from a place where the parent feels dismissed or unseen, projecting insecurity onto the child. Instead, what we could say is, I see you're having strong thoughts and feelings about this. Let's explore them together. Why it heals is it encourages critical thinking, again, co-learning, like we're both learning from this, while keeping the relationship rooted in curiosity rather than hierarchy. Okay. The next one is, look what you made me do. This statement displaces responsibility and energetically binds the child to the parent's reaction or pain. It sees guilt and emotional burden. Instead, what we can say is, I lost my temper, and that's something I'm working on. It's not your fault. Let's take a breath together. This models emotional accountability and teaches that each person is responsible for their own energy. That's a big one. I like that one. The next one is, you giving me a headache. You getting on my nerves. And my favorite, making my butt ache. You making my butt ache. This links the child's natural behavior to the parent's physical or emotional suffering, fostering the belief that their existence is harmful or burdensome. Instead, what I'm going to start trying to say, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. I need a moment to gather myself so that I can hear you fully. I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. I need a moment to gather myself so I can hear you fully. This teaches emotional awareness and self-regulation while affirming the child's right to be seen and heard. Again, just because they're 18 don't mean that you stop parenting. You're still a parent. The next one is, what's wrong with you? This phrase delivers a deep wound to the child's sense of self-worth. It implies defectiveness and creates shame instead of guiding correction. Instead, what we can say is, I can see you are struggling. Let's work together so we can both understand what's happening inside of you. These, they're so calming, the energetic insight or the spiritual upgrades. And this heals because it affirms that mistakes and emotions are invitations for connection, not rejection. The next one is, pay attention to what I'm saying. This often arises from a feeling of being dismissed or unseen and may carry a tone that shuts down rather than opens up. Instead, what we can say is, I want to make sure we are understanding each other. Can you share what you heard me say? This invites presence and reflection on fostering mutual respect. It also models emotional intelligence and deep listening. The next one is, we can't afford that. Often spoken from a state of financial stress or a mindset of scarcity. This phrase may teach the child that desire is dangerous, abundance is inaccessible, or that money is always tied to limitation. Whew. But instead, what we can say is, right now, that's not something I can invest in. Let's talk about some creative ways we can make it happen if this is important to you. This shifts the energy from scarcity to sovereignty and possibility, modeling choice over powerlessness. Oh, I love that. I love that one. The next one is, that's too much. This phrase, when said with tension, can communicate that the child's desires, emotions, or personality are overwhelming or inappropriate. Instead, what we can say is, that feels like a lot for me to take in right now. Can we slow down and explore it together later? Which creates a boundary without shaming the child's expression, preserving their inner permission to dream, feel, and ask. The next one is, you're always asking for something. Said in exasperation, this may cause a child to internalize the belief that their needs are a burden or that asking equals annoyance. Instead, what we can say is, I notice you're asking. Is there something you need that we haven't talked about? This transforms the complaint into curiosity, helping the parent discern the deeper need beneath repeated requests. I love that. Where was this book when I was parenting young kids? The absent parent, holding space with truth and tenderness. There are a few questions more delicate, more loaded with longing and unspoken sorrow, that when a child asks, where is my mother? Or why doesn't my father come around? Whether the absence is due to death, estrangement, abandonment, addiction, incarceration, or emotional unavailability, the child is left to interpret the silence in ways that often become internalized shame. Maybe I wasn't worth staying for. Maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I'm not lovable, or maybe I'm not important. As caregivers, spiritual stewards, and lineage healers, our responsibility is not to fix the absence. It is to fill the emotional gap with truth, compassion, and presence. We must remember the child's soul knows the absence already. What they are really asking for is language to process it. They are asking for energetic alignment in the space where confusion and grief are swirling. Spiritual hygiene teaches us that we do not lie to protect children. Bless the truth with care. We tell the truth cleanly without bitterness, shame, or projection. We hold the question without collapsing into our own pain or defending someone else's decision. We speak in a way that affirms the child's worth while making space for the absent parent's humanity and the mystery of their soul's journey. The appropriate responses to a child's question about an absent parent. Here are examples of spiritually hygienic, emotionally attuned responses. Okay. When the absence is by choice or abandonment, I don't know all the reasons your whatever, mother, father is not present, grandmother, grandfather, auntie, uncle, whatever the relationship is. What I do know is that their absence is not your fault. You are deeply loved and wanted. I am here for every question, every feeling, every moment of this. Can you tell me what it feels like for you? When the parent is struggling with addictions, trauma, or immaturity, you can say your whatever, mother, father, grandmother, uncle, aunt, cousin, is having some challenges right now that make it hard for them to show up the way you deserve. That does not mean you are unlovable. It means they are still growing. And even though they are not here, I want you to always feel safe to talk to me, to wonder, and to ask. When the parent has passed away, your whatever is no longer in a body. They no longer have a body. They live in the spirit. Their love for you is still real. We can talk to them, remember them, and feel them in ways that are soft. You are allowed to miss them, ask about them, and to celebrate them in a way that makes you feel good. Is there something you want to do for them right now? If a child expresses anger or sadness, you are allowed to feel everything. You don't have to. I'm here for it. We'll do it together without blame or shame. Can we talk about what you feel? Sacred reminders. Do not speak ill of the absent parent. Speak truthfully but cleanly. Take the age of the child into consideration. You can name the facts without poisoning the emotion. Affirm the child's lovability. Reinforce that the absence is not a reflection of their worth. Hold the mystery of the unknown truth and facts with reverence. Sometimes we don't have all the answers, and saying, I don't know, but I'm here, with spiritual honest response. Create a ritual where the child can name their feelings, ask their questions, or write letters to the parent, where those letters are sent, burned, or placed on an altar. Long before I became a guest on the Oprah Winfrey Show, I was an avid viewer. I clearly remember the day the beloved author Toni Morrison spoke the words, your children need to see your eyes light up when they walk into the room. It shifted how I saw saw and responded to my children and how I viewed myself as a parent. To parent with spiritual hygiene is to parent with intention. Whether your children are 5, 15, or 50, it is not a promise to always get it right. It's to remain aware, to take responsibility for your energy, and to create an atmosphere where love is not just spoken, but embodied. You are not raising children alone. You are raising your lineage, your inner child, your consciousness, and in many ways, the vibration of the planet. The moments you pause, the breath you take before reacting, the truth you speak without shame, these are sacred offerings. They are the invisible threads that weave safety, clarity, and healing into the hearts of your children. You will not always be perfect, but you can always choose to be present. When you are intentionally present, the home becomes the temple, your voice becomes a balm, and your presence becomes the clearest transmission of love your child will ever receive. Keep going, keep cleansing, keep returning. You are the altar. You are the answer. You are the blessing they have been waiting. And we are going to end with the prayer today. My nose is itching, so that was on point for somebody. We're going to end with the prayer today. We usually open with it. I felt led to bring it to the end of the message today. Such a powerful message around relating spiritual hygiene, this concept of clean living, inner authority, and divine freedom as that relates to us. Doesn't always mean that you birthed or you seeded the individual, but you've taken on the role parent to someone. This opening prayer around generational cleansing and healing prayer for parents. Divine, beloved presence, creator and keeper of my bloodline, guardian of my soul, I stand before you as one who chooses to interrupt the pain. I choose to cleanse the weight I have carried. I no longer choose to pass on what was never mine to give. I confess the stories I absorbed of not being enough, of being too much, of silence being safer than truth, of sacrifice being a form of love. I confess that I have parented from fear instead of faith, from pain instead of presence. I confess that I gave from lack rather than fullness, that I used discipline to replace devotion. I am aware that while this is not my fault, I am not the one to blame. I accept it as my responsibility as a parent to bring myself into a state of sacred alignment. I call back every fragmented piece of my inner child that I abandoned to survive. I offer every memory, every shadow, every dysfunction to the fire of your loving mercy. I ask for your healing light to wash through the roots of my family tree. Let your breath reach those who came before and those who have yet to come. May my children receive from me not my residue, but my clarity, not my regrets, but my wisdom, not my wounds, but my wholeness. I forgive myself. I forgive my parents. I forgive the ones who did not know how to love cleanly. I receive every echo of guilt, shame, punishment, and pain that does not belong in this new lineage I am calling into being. I now choose to be the end of a line and the beginning of a new path. From this moment forward, I choose to be a light, showing truth, shining truth, power, joy, peace, and love into my family tree and the roots from which this tree has grown. This is my intention. This is my declaration. I am the threshold. I am the bridge. I am the blessing. I ask for and open myself to receive divine guidance so that it may be so. I ask, I allow my children and their children, my parents and their parents, my lineage now receive. Amen. Ashe, Ao, so it. All right, y'all. Release the breath as an offering. That is our message for today. Very powerful what it was. So I hope that this message reaches those that it's meant to reach. I am manifesting that it will. Absolutely. Draw in those that would need to receive this message. I hope you guys are well and making good use of your time. If you have not, you are still able to go and pick up this book, maybe $25, $30, Spiritual Hygiene from Iyanla Vanzant. It will be a beautiful addition to your library. If you collect books, if you're a reader, if you're looking for ways to live a fuller life, I think this is very beneficial in that way. All about a practical path for clean living, inner authority, and divine freedom. In all that we do, this is what we're looking for. We just don't know it many times. And we have interesting ways of trying to get it. But it all comes down to wanting to live a clean life, like wanting to be able to go to sleep soundly at night, at the end of the day, knowing that you're good. Being able to tap into our inner authority, right? Not necessarily being dependent on anyone or anything, but knowing that it all lies within. And then being able to express that outward through your divine freedom. This is what we're looking for. Interesting ways of going about getting it. We've created many ways of doing that, but in essence, spiritual hygiene is it. So with that being said, you guys enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I hope you are getting it in today when it comes to taking care of yourself, doing what you need to do to prepare for this next week. The way we started doing many times is the way that we'll end them, or we'll continue them at least. So here's to starting off for a beautiful week ahead. Again, my name is Leticia, and the reading is all around spiritual hygiene. The channel is Blood Moon Oracle. I ask that you like, share, comment, share this with someone. If you feel like this message would be beneficial, definitely a powerful message around parenting. One of the greatest responsibilities that we can have in this lifetime is parenting. And so share it if you feel like someone could benefit from this message. If you want to support the channel, you can just like, comment, subscribe if you have not. If you find yourself subscribing for the first time, feel free to hit the bell so you'll be notified of meetings or readings or the last few sessions we'll have. We're just about done with this book, but there's so much more coming, okay? So I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for stopping by. Blood Moon Oracle is the channel. Take care.